Today, we're reviewing a story that demonstrates how financial manipulation can hide behind the language of self-care and why setting boundaries isn't control, it's self-preservation. This case shows what happens when one partner mistakes generosity for an unlimited resource. Let's get into it. My wife sent me a performance review during a $2.8 million business meeting and gave me 7 days to prove I was worth keeping. I'm sitting in a conference room with 3 senior executives from our biggest potential client. My phone buzzes and I see a message from Jessica that starts with husband performance evaluation urgent followed by a 5-page document attached. The subject line alone makes my stomach drop, but I can't look at it because I'm literally in the middle of pitching a deal that could change my entire career. So, I silence my phone and keep going. The presentation goes well. We shake hands. They say they'll have an answer by Friday. And I walk out feeling like I just nailed something huge. Then I open that message in my car and everything shifts. It's formatted like an actual HR review, complete with categories, scores out of 10, and detailed notes on my failures as a husband. Financial contribution gets a 6 out of 10 because apparently I'm meeting baseline expectations, but showing no growth initiative. Emotional availability gets a 4 because I work too much. Romance gets a 3 because I forgot our 3-month anniversary. At the bottom in bold red text, she wrote, "You have 7 days to prove you're worth staying married to. Don't disappoint me again." I sit there staring at my phone for maybe 10 minutes, not angry, just genuinely confused about when my marriage became a job I could get fired from. Let me back up and explain how I got here. I'm David, 32 years old, regional sales manager for a mid-sized tech company, and I make decent money, around $140,000 a year, plus bonuses. I own my house outright because I bought it as a foreclosure 6 years ago and spent 2 years fixing it up myself. I met Jessica at my cousin's wedding about 10 months ago. She was a bridesmaid, beautiful, charming, and we hit it off immediately. She was 24 then, working as a marketing coordinator for some startup, and she seemed ambitious and independent. We dated for 5 months, got engaged, married 3 months later, and honestly, everything felt fine until about 3 weeks after the wedding. That's when she quit her job. She told me she wanted to focus on being a wife, on making our home perfect, on supporting my career so I could advance faster. It sounded sweet at the time, like she really wanted to invest in us as a team. I said, okay, thinking maybe she was burned out from her job and needed a break. But then the spending started before we got married. Jessica was pretty normal about money. She'd split checks, buy her own stuff, never expected me to cover everything. After the wedding, it's like a switch flipped. Suddenly, she's ordering $300 worth of skincare products, signing up for a boutique gym that costs $200 a month, getting her hair done every 3 weeks at some fancy salon downtown. I'm not cheap. I've never been cheap, but I started noticing that every week there's another charge on our joint account for something she needed. I tried bringing it up gently a few months in, asking if maybe we could budget a little better, and she looked at me like I just insulted her entire existence. She said, "I gave up my career for you. The least you can do is make sure I'm taken care of." Which felt manipulative, but I didn't have the energy to fight about it. So, I just let it go and figured we'd work it out eventually. Fast forward to today to this absolutely insane message, and I realize I've been ignoring a lot of red flags because I wanted to believe I made the right choice marrying her. I drive home in silence, rehearsing different responses in my head, trying to figure out if I'm overreacting or if this is genuinely as crazy as it feels. When I get there, Jessica's on the couch watching some reality show, and she looks up at me with this expectant smile, like she's waiting for me to apologize. I don't say anything at first. I just walk past her into the kitchen and pour myself a glass of water. She follows me and asks if I got her message, and I tell her, yeah, I got it, right in the middle of the most important meeting of my career. She doesn't even flinch, just says, "Good. So, you understand? We need to have a serious conversation about our future." Like, she's a manager calling an underperforming employee into her office. I ask her if she's serious about this whole 7-day evaluation thing. And she nods and says, "Completely serious, David. I've been unhappy for a while and I need to see real change or I don't think this is going to work." Her tone is so casual, like she's talking about returning a sweater that didn't fit right. I stand there looking at her, really looking at her, and I see someone I don't recognize anymore. This isn't the woman I married, or maybe it is, and I was just too distracted to notice. I take a breath and say something I've been thinking about for weeks, but never had the courage to actually verbalize. I tell her, if you're evaluating me, then I'm evaluating you too. Consider this a mutual review period. Her face goes blank for a second, like she didn't expect me to push back at all. And then she laughs this short, dismissive laugh and says, "Fine, evaluate away. I'm sure you'll realize pretty quickly that you're lucky to have me." She walks back to the couch and unpauses her show, and I go upstairs to my office and close the door. I sit down at my desk and open my laptop, not really sure what I'm doing yet, but knowing that something fundamental just changed. I pull up our joint bank account and start scrolling through the last few months of transactions, and what I find makes my blood run cold. We're talking thousands of dollars spent on things that have nothing to do with running a household. Clothes, restaurants, subscriptions to services I've never even heard of. And the kicker is that her contribution to any of this is exactly $0. She hasn't worked, hasn't brought in any income, and hasn't even really managed the house because we still order takeout 4 times a week, and I'm the one who does most of the cleaning. I close the laptop and lean back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. And for the first time in months, I feel something other than confusion. I feel clarity. If Jessica wants to evaluate whether I'm worth keeping, then I'm going to evaluate whether this marriage is worth keeping. And I have a feeling I already know what the answer is going to be. What stands out here is how the performance review wasn't designed to improve anything. It was designed to establish blame before she left. When someone frames your relationship as a job evaluation, they've already emotionally checked out and are building their exit narrative. The real evaluation began the moment he decided to look at the facts instead of accepting her framing. Day 2 of her evaluation is when I realized my wife wasn't a partner. She was a liability. I wake up at 6 o'clock like I always do. Shower, get dressed for work, and when I come downstairs, Jessica's still asleep in our bedroom with the door closed. This isn't unusual. She rarely gets up before 10:30. But today, it hits different because I'm actively paying attention to what she actually does with her time. I make coffee, check my emails, and before I leave for the office, I do something I've never done before. I take my laptop with me instead of leaving it on my desk at home. I also call my brother Tom and ask him if he can swing by the house later to pick up some tools I borrowed. But really, I'm giving him a spare key and asking him to keep an eye on things in case the situation escalates. He agrees without asking too many questions because he's always been good like that. On my lunch break, I log into our joint account from my office and start building a spreadsheet. Every transaction from the time she quit her job organized by category. It takes me almost 2 hours, but by the end, I have a complete financial picture of our marriage, and it's worse than I thought. Jessica has spent $9,200 in the 4 months since she quit working. That's clothes, beauty treatments, restaurants with her friends, subscription boxes, online shopping, boutique fitness classes, and about a dozen other things that have nothing to do with our household. Her contribution to our joint expenses, to groceries, utilities, mortgage, anything that actually keeps our life running is $0. I sit there staring at the numbers, feeling like an idiot for not catching this sooner, but I was busy working and trying to build a future, and I trusted her to be reasonable. That trust was clearly misplaced. I create a new checking account in my name only and transfer most of my money into it, leaving just enough in the joint account to cover the bills I know are coming due this month. Then I call my buddy Mike, who's a family lawyer, and ask him if he has time for a drink after work. We meet at a bar near his office around 7 o'clock, and I lay out the whole situation, the performance review, the spending, the entitlement, all of it. Mike listens without interrupting, and when I'm done, he's quiet for a minute before he says anything. He tells me that what I'm describing sounds like financial manipulation. That's someone who contributes nothing but demands everything and then threatens to leave if you don't meet their standards is controlling you. He says I should document everything, take screenshots, save messages, keep records of all spending because if this goes where he thinks it's going, I'm going to need proof. He also tells me something I wasn't expecting, that Jessica has been talking about me to mutual friends for months, complaining that I'm cheap, that I don't appreciate her, that she could have done better. Mike says he didn't want to tell me before because he thought maybe it was just normal marriage venting. But combined with everything else, it paints a pretty clear picture of someone who's been checked out of this relationship for a while. I drive home feeling like I just got punched in the stomach. Not because I'm heartbroken, but because I'm angry at myself for missing all the signs. When I get there, Jessica is in the living room with her friend Emma. They're drinking wine and watching something on Netflix, and they both look up when I walk in. Emma leaves pretty quickly, says she has to get home, and I can tell from the look on her face that they were talking about me. Once she's gone, I sit down across from Jessica and ask her directly if she's been complaining about me to our friends. She gets defensive immediately, says I'm being paranoid that she's allowed to talk to her friends about her feelings. I tell her that's fine, but maybe don't post about it on Instagram where 3,000 people can see it. Her face goes pale and she asks what I'm talking about. So, I pull out my phone and show her the screenshots I took during my lunch break. She posted a story yesterday about being married to someone who doesn't understand that maintaining yourself costs money. And another one this morning about cheap men who expect their wives to look expensive on a Walmart budget. She tries to laugh it off. Says she was just venting and didn't think I'd see it, but I point out that it's public, that anyone, including my coworkers and family, can see it, that she's humiliating me online while living off my income. She gets quiet and then says something that genuinely shocks me. She says, maybe if you made more money, I wouldn't have to complain. I just stare at her because I make $140,000 a year. We have no debt except the mortgage, which is tiny, and she spends money like we're pulling in $500,000. I tell her that the joint account is going to be for household expenses only from now on. That my paycheck will go into a separate account, and that if she needs money for personal things, she can get a job like every other adult. She loses it. Starts yelling about how I'm trying to control her, how I promise to take care of her, how this isn't what she signed up for. I stay calm and tell her that I didn't sign up to be an ATM with a wedding ring, that marriage is supposed to be a partnership. And right now, I'm the only one contributing anything. She storms off to the bedroom and slams the door, and I spend the rest of the night in my office going through more bank statements and screenshotting her social media posts. Day 3, I work from home and watch what Jessica actually does all day. She wakes up at 11 o'clock, makes herself breakfast, spends 2 hours on her phone, goes to a yoga class, comes home, showers, and then sits on the couch scrolling through shopping apps until I'm done working. She doesn't clean anything, doesn't cook, doesn't do laundry, doesn't even take out the trash. When I ask her what she did today, she says she was busy and seems genuinely offended that I'm questioning her. That evening, I get a text from Mike saying he heard from another friend that Jessica's been telling people she's keeping her options open, which is apparently code for she's already thinking about her next relationship before this one is even over. I don't confront her about it yet because I'm still gathering information, still building my case, but internally I've already made my decision. Day 4, I meet with the lawyer Mike recommended, a woman named Rachel who specializes in divorce cases, and I walk her through everything. She takes notes, asks questions about assets and timelines, and tells me that if we move forward, I'll want to act fast before Jessica figures out what's happening and starts hiding things or making accusations. I leave her office with a folder full of paperwork and a retainer agreement. And on my drive home, I feel something I haven't felt in months. I feel like I'm back in control of my own life. When I walk through the door that night, Jessica's waiting for me with her arms crossed. And I know from her expression that she's figured out something's changed. She just doesn't know what yet. This section shows why documentation matters more than arguments in relationship disputes. He didn't try to convince her or change her mind. He simply collected facts and protected himself legally. When someone accuses you of control for setting boundaries around your own resources, they're telling you exactly who they are. Believe them. By day 7, my wife learned what my worth actually was when it disappeared. Day 5 starts with me making phone calls from my office at work. The kind of calls you make when you're systematically removing someone from your life. First, I call our phone carrier and move Jessica's line to a separate account under her name. She can keep the number, but she'll have to pay for it herself starting next month. Then, I call our car insurance company and remove her from my policy. She's listed as a driver on my car, but it's titled in my name only, so legally I can do this. I update all my beneficiary information on my life insurance and retirement accounts, changing everything from Jessica to my brother Tom, and I send an email to HR at work doing the same thing with my health insurance and 401k. The whole process takes about 3 hours, and by the time I'm done, I feel lighter, like I've been carrying something heavy, and finally put it down. I leave work early and drive straight to Rachel's office, where I sign the divorce petition and write a check for her retainer. She tells me the papers will be ready to serve by tomorrow and asks if I want to be there when it happens. I tell her no, just have the process server go to the house in the morning when I'm at work. That evening, I come home and Jessica's in the kitchen making herself a smoothie, and she asks me if I've thought about her evaluation and what changes I'm planning to make. I look at her standing there in her expensive workout clothes with her fresh manicure, holding a $400 blender, and I almost laugh at the absurdity of it all. I tell her I've thought about it a lot, and I'll have an answer for her tomorrow. She smiles like she's already won and goes back to her smoothie. Day 6 is when everything falls apart for her. I go to work like normal, and around 10 o'clock in the morning, I get a text from my neighbor Greg with a photo attached. He's the retired guy 2 doors down who I helped with his fence last summer. The photo shows Jessica screaming at a process server on our front porch. Apparently, she didn't take the divorce papers well. My phone starts blowing up with calls and texts from her, but I ignore all of them. I'm in back-to-back meetings all day, and I genuinely don't have time for her drama. Around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Tom calls and tells me I need to come home, that Jessica's mother showed up at the house, and they're both losing their minds. I tell him I'll be there in 30 minutes, and I leave work early for the second day in a row. When I pull into my driveway, there's a car I don't recognize parked on the street, and I can hear yelling from inside the house before I even open the door. Jessica and her mother, Linda, are both in the living room. Jessica's crying and Linda is pacing back and forth talking on her phone. When I walk in, they both turn to look at me like I'm the villain in their story. Linda hangs up and immediately starts in on me about how I'm ruining her daughter's life, how I'm abandoning my responsibilities, how no real man would treat his wife this way. I let her finish, and then I very calmly tell her that her daughter hasn't worked in 4 months, has spent more than $9,000 of my money on personal luxuries, publicly humiliated me on social media, and gave me a literal performance review like I'm her employee. Linda looks at Jessica for confirmation, and Jessica just stands there crying, not denying any of it. I tell them both that I'm done with this conversation and that they need to leave. Linda says Jessica lives here and doesn't have to go anywhere. So, I pull out my phone and show them the 30-day notice to vacate that Rachel had drafted. Jessica has 30 days to find somewhere else to live. After that, I can pursue formal eviction if necessary. Linda's face goes red and she starts yelling again, calling me every name she can think of, and Jessica just crumples onto the couch, sobbing. I go upstairs to my office and lock the door. I can hear them downstairs for another hour before they finally leave. Around 8 that night, my doorbell rings, and when I look through the window, I see Jessica standing there with 2 of her friends. I open the door, and before I can say anything, she pushes past me into the house. Her friends follow, and suddenly I've got 3 women in my living room staging what I guess is supposed to be an intervention. Jessica's calmer now. She's not crying anymore, and she tells me that she overreacted this morning, that she was shocked and hurt, but she's ready to talk rationally now. She says she knows she made mistakes, but so did I. That marriage is about compromise, that we can work through this if I just cancel the divorce and give her another chance. Her friends nod along like this is a reasonable request, like the last 4 months didn't happen. I stand there listening to her talk, and I realize she still doesn't get it. She still thinks this is negotiable, that she can manipulate her way back into the life she had. When she finally stops talking, I look at her and say the only thing that needs to be said. I tell her, you had 7 days and you wasted all of them. Her face changes. The fake calm disappears and she starts yelling again about how I never loved her, how I used her, how she gave up everything for me. I don't argue because there's no point. I just tell her and her friends to leave and that if they don't, I'll call the police. They leave, but not before Jessica tells me I'm going to regret this, that she'll take me for everything I have, that I'll end up alone and miserable. I closed the door behind them and changed all the locks that night. I ordered new hardware online 2 days ago and it arrived this morning. Day 7 is quiet. Jessica doesn't come by, doesn't call, doesn't text. I go to work, come home, and spend the evening packing up her belongings into boxes that I'll have delivered to wherever she ends up. I find clothes with tags still on them, shoes she wore once, beauty products that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Every box I pack feels like evidence of how blind I was. How I let someone take advantage of me because I wanted to believe I made the right choice. That night, I sleep better than I have in months because I know it's finally over. I know that I'm getting my life back and I know that Jessica is about to learn a very expensive lesson about what happens when you mistake someone's patience for weakness. 6 months later, the divorce is finalized and I'm sitting in my living room with a cup of coffee thinking about how different my life looks now. Jessica tried to fight for alimony, but her lawyer couldn't make a case when she'd only been unemployed for 4 months of our 8-month marriage and had no dependents. Last I heard from Mike, she's working retail at a mall across town, living with 2 roommates in a small apartment, and dealing with credit card debt from trying to maintain her lifestyle after I cut her off. I don't take any pleasure in her struggles, but I also don't feel guilty about them. She made her choices, and these are the consequences. As for me, I got that $2.80 $8 million contract approved 3 weeks after the divorce was filed, which came with a promotion and a significant raise. I've been seeing someone new for about 2 months now, a veterinarian named Kate, who owns her own practice and insisted on splitting the bill on our first date. She's 30, financially independent. And when I told her about Jessica, she said something that stuck with me. She said that anyone who makes you prove your worth doesn't understand what partnership means. I think about that performance review sometimes, about how insulting and dehumanizing it was to have my value as a husband reduced to scores and metrics. But I also think about how it was the wake-up call I needed. How without that moment of clarity, I might have stayed in that marriage for years, slowly losing myself while Jessica drained my bank account and my self-respect. She wanted to evaluate my worth, and in doing so, she revealed her own, or rather the complete absence of it. The outcome here illustrates a hard truth about relationships. When you stop enabling someone's entitlement, they don't suddenly appreciate you. They just find their next target. His ex-wife never learned to contribute. She just learned that he wouldn't fund her lifestyle anymore. Real partnership means mutual investment, not one person auditioning while the other judges from the couch. What do you think about the story? Let me know in the comments. Drop a like and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories.